Do you have an area of tension in your life where you feel like there's conflict, maybe in your house, your workplace? Well, I have some good news for you. The good news is I have my friend Rusty, who has a master's degree in conflict resolution, conflict management. And he's going to share some of his best tips and tricks to help us resolve and navigate conflict. Thank you so much for joining us, Rusty.
It's my pleasure.
What is conflict?
Conflict is, when I was in grad school, we had to come up with our own definition of conflict. And conflict is anytime two symbols try to occupy the same space at the same time, whether that be two ideas, two people, somebody's nose, somebody's fist, whether it be two policies, whether it be my company can't make enough widgets, whatever that symbol is, that's what conflict is, right?
Okay.
What we have a tendency to do is we have a tendency to divide conflict mostly into the negative, right? And that's just a bad way. So conflict is two symbols trying to come together.
Okay.
We assign whether it's negative or positive.
What would be an example of conflict in a relationship?
So let's say that I've been married 39 years. Right?
Congratulations. That's almost 40.
Yeah. Well, it'll be 40 in June.
Okay.
Or July. Sorry. July.
Right around the corner.
Yeah, right around the corner. And the conflicts that we had in the beginning were far more damaging than the conflicts now. I tell people that my last 10 years of marriage is like my first year of marriage, right? The first year was great, right? And then as kids come around and bills started coming around, the conflict started getting worse and worse and worse. And we were young and didn't have the tools to actually deal with the conflict. We didn't know it was conflict. So all conflicts seemed negative. Today, we both have been through them trials and tribulations. Today, we have the tools and the experience and the knowledge to understand that 99% of stuff that's going on, first of all, it's not even a conflict, at least a negative conflict. And it's in the conflict is, do you want to go on a cruise or do you want to go to an all-inclusive? Right?
I see.
That's the conflict now. Right?
Yeah.
But that's easy for me to say now, right? I'm approaching the end of my career, not the beginning of my career.
Different season of life.
Different season of life, right? And as we get, a mechanic that has, 3 months of experience, pretty rough on your car, right? A mechanic that's got 30 years of experience, slides through it with ease, right? If they've done their homework.
So what happens if somebody doesn't understand the nature of conflict? Like what does their relationship potentially look like in the negative sense if they don't understand some of these things and these tools and how to apply them?
Well, so conflict is an everyday, all day affair, right? We have conflict no matter what. If I want to be there, I can't be here, right? What sandwich am I going to eat, right? Whatever that conflict is. And so what we want to do is try to put conflict in perspective, right? Once we kind of put conflict in perspective, it has a whole host of positive changes in your life, right? So we know that if you have a negative conflict, that your stress levels go up. We know there's not a study that says stress is good for you. People that say, I live on stress, I strive for stress, that's not true, right? They are slowly dying from the inside out, right?
So like cortisol and the things that we hear about when it comes to stress.
All of that.
Yeah.
Nobody can live on stress indefinitely, right? Now, stress has its place, right? But you can't. Even the best trained people in the world can't live on stress.
Wow.
And so now think of your life as a newly married couple and you don't have the tools for stress, or you got a brand new job, right? And we've all had that job when we were young and we tried to be the next professional. Real estate's one of the prime examples, right? Where, I don't know how many times when I was in real estate, I had to be told, hey, you can't work all night. You got to tell people no.
Sure. Right.
That kind of stuff. And, am I going to sell the next house? Well, that adds stress. And we know that stress has tremendous negative health effects, right? It's bad on your heart. It causes cancer, emotional distress. Suicide rates are a lot higher with people with stress. And there's no positive aspect of long-term stress.
Wow.
Right? So if you start understanding conflict
Mm-hmm.
and putting conflict in its proper perspective, all of that stress starts to go away. I.e., think about your first years of marriage and your
Mm-hmm.
last years of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Think about your first years of employment versus your last year's employment, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you first started selling houses versus down the road, right?
Right.
And what changes that is the introduction of another stressor, right? Say,
Mm-hmm.
everything's going great and you get a new boss,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now all of a sudden that all starts over again,
Yeah.
right? And today it's easy for me, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I have good perspective. I can go, look, I can leave because I can be working tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? But when you're young and you don't understand that, you might be stuck in that stressor, right? Or
Yeah.
that conflict.
So stuck in our perspective or our current way of thinking.
Yes.
So in order to be able to, would resolve conflict be an accurate way to put it? Or to manage conflict? It'd be manage conflict,
Yeah.
right? So in order to manage conflict in a healthy way, there's a high chance that my perspective needs to change,
Yeah.
generally speaking.
So our general statement
Mhm.
is conflict management and dispute resolution.
Okay.
Right? So
Sounds like a course.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like a
college course.
Yeah. So I manage conflict.
Okay.
Right? And I manage conflict by all kinds of different ways.
So it's not like we have it or we don't. We have conflict. It's a matter of how we. Okay. So the question is not if we have it or don't. The question is, how am I currently managing the conflict I have?
Yes.
Got it.
How
Okay.
are you putting that conflict into perspective,
Mhm.
right? I.e., managing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is everything a negative? Is everything a disaster? You've seen these people that just go from one chaotic situation to the other.
Sure.
And you think, how in the heck do they? And then you see that other person that goes, man, nothing bothers them,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
I mean, and so how do they just let that roll off their back?
Yeah.
And what we do is we sign these characters of each other, right?
Mhm.
This person is just, he's just a nut, right?
Mhm.
And the other person doesn't care about anything, right?
Right.
Well, that's not necessarily the case, right? It's
Yeah.
just how they're managing their conflict, and
Mhm.
we're seeing it differently than they are, right?
Mhm.
And so what I want to do is, or my goal is to make sure that everybody understands how to put it in perspective. I told you about the dog the other day.
Mhm.
Dog got out. He went there, couldn't find him. We searched all over, couldn't find him. We had this big search party basically going on.
Right.
And we found him in a well,
Mhm.
right? My grandson says, oh my God, this is the worst day ever. Dopey's in a well, right? And I said, told him, Brant, I said, this is the best day ever. We found Dopey, right? And at almost 5 years old, he immediately switched.
Wow.
Right? That,
Yeah.
yes, this is a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my son come over later because it was actually his dog.
Yeah.
And it took him a while, right? He was so mad that his dog got out and it kept going on. What if he'd got hit by a car?
Sure.
And I'm going, but he didn't, like this.
Yeah.
And he left mad.
Mm-hmm.
And about an hour later, he calls back and says, hey, thanks for getting Dopey, man. Thanks for searching and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it takes us a little while to change that perspective.
That's fair.
Right?
Think about it.
Emotion has a lot to do with it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That makes sense.
How we're processing it,
Yeah.
right? And today I process that emotion a lot faster
Mm-hmm.
than, when I was 20.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So when you say you referenced tools,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of those tools, and then how do we use them?
Well, perspective is when we're talking about management.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to separate conflict management versus dispute resolution. If we have an argument going on, and dispute resolution may or may not be positive or negative too, right? It depends on the dispute.
Got it.
Right. Our managing, when I manage something,
Mm-hmm.
I try to put it in perspective. When I'm trying to solve a dispute
Mm-hmm.
or a negative conflict, I'm trying to build what they call a common good.
Okay.
Right? That your common good and my common good align.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We'll go back to, say, the religion thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you and I are friends,
Mm-hmm.
and our friendship is number one,
Mm-hmm.
you and I can have a very in-depth conversation about our religious beliefs.
Right.
Right? And not get mad at each other, and we can share, and I can truly go, wow, can we share that perspective with me? Wow. Oh, well, why is that this and this is that like this? And we can go back and forth because our common good is to maintain our friendship.
I see. That's at the core. That's the staple,
core,
the foundation.
Right? Without that, we can't solve this dispute.
I see.
Right? Even if we 100% disagree, if our common good is friendship, then it's good. But if each of our common good doesn't align, if your common good is to convince me you're right, and my common good is to convince you I'm right, or vice versa, one's right and one's wrong, we're not going to come together, right?
Yeah.
I.e. the Middle East and the United States. That is not going to solve. It's just not, right? Because our common goods are not the same.
It's not. Yeah, I'm with you.
And so if you go back in politics, right? We have a two-party system. Well, one thing that you could say if you go back far enough is that you go like, look, I disagree with that person 100%, but they truly want to better the United States, right? And the difference is that we both believed that person wants to better the United States.
Yeah, that's the common good.
That's the common good.
Yeah.
Today, although both of them may believe that they're doing what's best for the United States, the difference is the two sides don't believe that the other one has the same common good.
I see what you're saying.
Right? And so it's going to be very difficult. So what we need to be doing is not working on policy. What we need to be doing is working on what is our common good and how do we get everybody focused back on the common good. How we get there is like our religion, debate.
Sure.
There's all kinds of different ways to get there. But if we both believe that the common good is the key, this is not a big deal.
I see what you're saying. So with, I'm thinking back to about 2 weeks ago, we had this opportunity open up where both of our kids decided to go to church camp. And therefore, my wife and I had a weekend to ourselves. And I'm thinking, let's go. Like I'm looking up tickets to Tucson where we catch a plane in a few hours and we're gone.
Yeah.
And we ended up, so I wanted to go out of town last minute. My wife was not on board. She likes planning and all that. And so we went from, okay, let's catch a flight. Let's get out of here, to where she's like, what are you talking about? Let's stay home and just relax at the house. We ended up, the end of the story is we ended up agreeing to go out of town. However, we went down to Fayetteville, Arkansas, kept it simple. So the scenario is my wife she wants to stay here. I want to go out of town. What would be some practical steps to navigate that?
So first thing is first. What is the common good in that scenario?
It would be the relationship, right?
Yeah. Well, you tell me, right?
Yeah.
What's the common good? Is to maintain the relationship. That's your number one thing.
Right. Strengthen and build the relationship.
And to build that relationship. Basically what you're doing is to build that relationship. You're take the vacation out of it, right? What is the essence of the vacation, right? It's your time together. So really, whether you just sat in the living room, the time together.
So we're already on the same page. We already want to spend time together.
Now all we're doing is arguing whether we're going to an all-inclusive resort or a cruise.
Man, right? And even just talking through it, just already, it defuses the situation.
Yeah. Does it really matter to you as long as you get to stay with your wife?
That's a good point.
Yeah, it really doesn't. So now it's a matter of pro and con list and stuff like this. But there may be another common good. Maybe your kids are gone, right, to camp. Maybe as a mother, she's a little more in tune to being too far away from them if something happens. Subconsciously, she's wanting to make sure that she's closer to the kids.
I see.
I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And you're a dad. You're like, man, they're in good hands. Let's bag out of here, right? And so there can be multiple layers of common good, right? And in this case, she's probably, as we get farther and farther down the pie, I want to spend time with you. I want our relationships first, then I want to spend time with you. And now all of a sudden we're getting into these subcategories of the kids, right? And you're like, I want to go here because I want to see the mountains or whatever the case may be. And she's going, I want to do that, but I don't want to get too far away from the kids.
Yeah.
Right? And so now we're kind of dissecting them things. Yeah. But I'll make a compromise and I'll go here.
But it sounds like, with identifying the common good.
Always. Okay. Always the common good.
So define what is the common good, or define it and give us some questions that we could ask to discover that.
So what is your ultimate goal?
Okay.
what are you trying to, so out of this argument, what are you trying to do? And so one of there's some steps. And so what we do is we make the approach.
Okay.
One thing that in conflict management or dispute resolution, and I will interchange them phrases every now and then. But what I got to do is I got to make an approach. How many times in your career have you had somebody texting and you go, this person's mad at me, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And then you're asking these questions and all of a sudden you find out, well, they're not talking, they're texting each other.
Yeah.
Right. And so we've taken out a complete piece of the communication cycle, right?
Right.
We can't
tonality, body language, volume,
all kinds of stuff, right? We've taken that completely out and we're wondering what's going on, right? So when I say make the approach, right, that's the number one. There's 5 steps basically. Within them 5 steps, there's thousands of different steps. But we're going to make the approach, right? I'm gonna belly up. In this case, I'm going to say like a man. Yeah. And I'm going to walk up to you and I'm going to say, Chris, we have an issue I want to talk to you about. Right?
So initiate the conversation.
We got to initiate the conversation.
Yeah.
I gotta have the courage to actually approach you.
That's good.
Without fear. Now, is there going to be some anxiety? Yes, there's going to be some anxiety. But if I truly want, how much danger would you put yourself in if one of your kids were at stake?
As much as required.
As much as required, right? Yeah. So it's not a matter of whether you can do it. It's a matter of motivation. Yeah. Right? How motivated are you to solve this conflict? Right? Are you motivated enough like you would be to, I mean, you don't have any problem walking up to a teacher that disrespected your kid. Right? You go, sure, right up there. Right. So now can we do that with each other as employees, as husband and wife, like that? Yeah. And we go, okay, hey, I'm having this issue. Let's make this approach. Then we build perspectives, right? So tell me why you're doing this or why you believe that or whatever the case may be.
So we get curious and start asking questions.
We start asking open-ended questions like what, I have to know why you are mad at me, right? If I knew why, I might have already fixed it, right? Right? But maybe it's something completely something I didn't know I did. Right? I mean, how many times have you made your wife mad and you didn't even realize that?
100%. Right.
She brings that up and you go like, when did I do that?
Yeah.
Right. I had an employee irritated at me just the other day. Right. And I pride myself on being, kind and generous and respectful and all this other stuff. Sure. And she walks in and she goes, she starts talking. I go, are you irritated? She goes, yeah, I'm irritated about this issue going on. And I go, what was it? She gave me this idea that was put out there. Yeah. And I go, well, who said that? And she goes, you did. And I go, I did? And so instead of me going, I didn't do that. Getting defensive, yeah. I go, I did? And I go, oh my God, I'm sorry. Right? Yeah. Immediately I apologize because if I did do it, yeah, then that was a dumb decision, right? And if I didn't do it, she perceived that I did, and so in both cases, I need to apologize, and fix it, yeah, right? Because the common good here is that she's a good employee and good for the department and all this stuff, right? Yeah. And so without building perspectives, without her having the courage to walk in and going, no, you did this, basically. We wouldn't have solved it. We'd just been mad at each other for days. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. And then we got to decide. Let me just see. Yeah. So once we kind of build them perspectives, right? Then we go into the understanding part. Okay, I see where you're coming from, but help me understand why you believe that. So perspective is getting curious about their perspective. The question asking. Yeah. Deals. Where coming from curiosity. So this is what you believe about me. And this is what I believe about you. We're sharing our perspectives. Okay. And now I need to understand why you believe that. I.e., because you wrote that policy. Okay. Oh shoot, I did? Yeah. Right? So digging a little bit deeper is what we're getting to the root. We're getting deeper, right? Yeah. We're starting to understand understanding the why of the situation. Yeah. Right. Well, my perspective is it's easy for you to come. I do this with police officers all the time. When they walk in, they go, some guy's on the street And they go, well, all you got to do is get a job and you wouldn't be there, right? All you got to do is get an education and you wouldn't be in the situation. All you got to do is stop doing drugs and you wouldn't be in that situation, right? Well, now let's flip it to that person, right? What is their perspective, right? This guy is beating me down, right? I'm in the worst place of my life, and you're here yelling at me and all this other stuff, right?
A lot of judgment going on.
A lot of judgment going on.
Yeah, no
Now
questions.
Okay, let's build some understanding here. How did you get there, right? At what point in your life did this take a turn, right? Can the person just, okay, I think I'm just going to get up, stop drugs. Tomorrow I'm going to go in and enroll and pay $400 or $500 a credit hour, and I'm going to get a master's degree in conflict management. No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right? And so building that understanding that, look, I don't have the capacity to do what you're telling me to do. Right? I don't have the capacity to believe or do this conflict. Right? That's a very important part. The next part is that we're going to basically come up with some solutions. Right? We're going to come up with a plan. All right. Okay. I see that you're down there, but I have these resources that I'm going to get you, right? And then we're going to work on your path, right? And so once we kind of build the solution, I'm going to buy a new truck to haul more widgets, whatever your conflict is, right? Here's where it falls apart. Checking back in. We're going to agree upon these solutions, right? And then we're going to recap them. What we're going to do is we're going to follow through.
Okay.
And when I was in grad school one time, I was talking about public safety to one of my professors. As a professor, seems like we build, we do all these steps and we get all 4 steps, we make the approach and we build perspectives and we share understandings and we agree on these solutions and then it dies, right? It doesn't go anywhere.
I see.
Right? And then a year later, we're back into a conflict and we do this. I actually wrote a big paper on this for fire engineering, right? And he looked at me and he goes, Rusty, you're assuming they want to change. And it took me a little bit to understand what he was saying. And Colin Powell, when he was talking to Gorbachev, when they tore down the Berlin Wall and stuff, they're walking down a hallway together. And Gorbachev looked at Colin Powell and said, General, you're going to have to find yourself a new enemy. And Powell said, I don't want a new enemy. I like the one I got. Right? They were vested in their conflict. Right? Sometimes we get so vested in the conflict that it becomes identifiable. It becomes who we are. Right? Do you think that and I'm not banging on any one side or another. Do you think Reverend Jackson, and the police officers actually want to solve the conflict of racism? They both make a lot of, they both are identified in them conflicts, right? And so until we are not vested in the conflict itself, right? They've made an entire career on these conflicts.
So part of their identity is
the conflict. Yeah. And so when we get vested in a conflict, it becomes very, very difficult to turn it loose, right? Because it becomes who we are. That is one of the harder conflicts to take because the common good is keeping the conflict.
So how do we know if we're in that cycle? Because that's like, to me, I'm hearing like that would be a cycle of self-sabotage where, a person goes from one abusive relationship to the next, and that 100%.
You see it all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
So how could somebody that's listening say, what's going to be the indication where somebody may want to lean into this if they're in that cycle? How could they know they're in that cycle?
Well, it's difficult to know
if you're in it.
If I'm in it, right? It's like anything else. It's like having diabetes, right? I may have it. I may kind of think I have it, right? I'm not, not eating right, whatever the case may be. But sometimes it takes a doctor to go, hey, you're in this cycle, and here's your path out.
An outsider looking in.
Yeah.
So someone else's perspective.
I.e. conflict managers like myself, right?
Okay, got it.
And so I do some of this in my contract business, right?
I see.
And so a fire department will call and say, hey, we're in this conflict, right? And we can't get out of it. And they'll say, okay, I'll go in and talk to the union, talk to the chiefs, talk to the city, whatever the case may be, and find out where them pieces are, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, most of the time, they don't understand that this isn't just the way life is, right? How many times have you've done something your whole life, you think it's right because it's the way it's always been done.
Sure.
And now all of a sudden somebody from the outside comes out and they tell you different. Takes a little bit, right? Take some coaching and stuff like this.
Right.
And you finally go off on this other path.
So that's something you've helped people with, actually navigating that?
Sure.
Wow.
And so you just told me that you got a coach for your business.
Right.
Right? Why'd you get a coach for your business?
Yeah, to learn and grow, to change, do things differently, get different results.
You realized that you were in a pattern.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't quite know how to get out of it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But you knew that there was a better way.
Yeah.
But there's some people that can't even identify that they're in the bad way. Right?
I see.
That they're in a conflict cycle.
Okay.
Right? And it's up to us, friends, family, stuff like this, not unlike an alcoholic. I had this not too long ago, a young man I'm talking to, and he's having some issues with the people around him, right? He cannot, he's the guy that just has nonstop conflict.
I see.
Nonstop, right? I mean, people don't want to be around him. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Right? And he's very good at his craft. But he's just a ball of chaos, right? And so I'm talking to him and I asked him, what do you think is I'm gonna call him Joe. What do you think the issue is? He kept saying, well, everybody around me is this. Everybody does this. Everybody does this. And I said, no, let's talk about you, right? And we kept trying to bring the conversation back to him. And I compared it to an alcoholic. I said, if you don't think you're drinking, I go, how many alcoholics have you heard of or known that everybody around him is saying you're drinking too much? And the alcoholic is saying, I'm not. I got it under control, right?
Yeah.
That's conflict, right? Sometimes we're in the middle of all this chaos and we're so vested in the chaos. We're so wrapped around the axles in this survival mode that we're just doing this nonstop, trying to keep our head above water. And then it's hard to, there's an old saying, it's hard to remember your main mission was to drain the swamp when you're up to your butt in alligators.
That's
right?
Okay.
And that's what conflict, sometimes that's what conflict feels like, right?
I see.
It's just like, oh, I got a bill here and my wife is on me here and the kids need to go to school and she needs a root canal now. And now the car's broke down. Right. And this just keeps piling on and on and on. And what we're asking them to do is, okay, now take a breath and just calm down. Right. That's what we're doing.
Right.
Well, that's probably not going to work. Right. How many times have you told one of your kids, just calm down?
Right.
And at any time ever have they gone,
no.
Oh, thank God you told me to calm down, Dad.
Right.
I got this down now.
No,
of course not. Right. But we're trying to do that with other people too. Yeah. And that's when a professional comes in, especially when it gets way over the top, right?
So something to pay attention to is if we have a trusted friend or family member that's pointing out something they're concerned with or about, it may be beneficial to pay attention to what they're saying, especially if it's more than one person pointing out something they're concerned about.
Of course.
Instead of being defensive or reflective about it, trying to point outside instead of looking in.
I think if we have a growth mindset, I think that anything that people want to talk to you about, you should be open-minded to. Almost, right? I mean, there's some things that are
sure.
But I think as a general rule, like we don't see each other a lot,
right?
But I would consider us friends.
Right. Yep.
If you just showed up one day at my work and said, hey, Rusty, I want to talk to you about something. I would go, well, Chris, close the door, man. Let's...
Likewise, 100%.
Well, yeah, because I want to know. If you've been doing A, B, C, and D. I told this other employee, I did. Oh my God, I didn't mean to, right? I'm not infallible. I can make mistakes. I got a master's degree in conflict management and degrees in sociology and all this other stuff.
Right.
But it doesn't.
You're still human, right?
I'm still human, right?
Yeah.
And trust me, I make my wife mad on a regular basis.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's important that we take these outside clues.
Yeah.
But when I'm up to here in conflict,
Mm-hmm.
that's a difficult conversation, right?
Mm.
Because what do you normally hear? Well, it's easy for you to say. You
Mm-hmm.
have money in the bank. It's easy for you. Your wife loves you. It's easy for you.
Right.
Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what we have a tendency to do is we go, well, not you and I, because we studied better, is we throw our heuristics back onto them,
Mm-hmm.
right? We throw our paradigm back. We go like, well, if you would have just got an education, if you would have just got this, if you would just treat your wife better, if you wouldn't, you know,
Yeah.
if you would have listened to me a year ago, blah blah blah. And I
Right.
found myself doing it, right?
Yeah.
I got a young son that's getting ready to have a baby, and
Wow.
you know they're going through all the same stuff that,
Mm-hmm.
that Sheila and I went through when we were young. You know,
Sure.
there's no money in this and house payments and
All the challenges.
you know, I
right.
forgot to pay my, you know, forgot to pay my taxes, forgot to do this,
Right.
you know, oh, I didn't take the cut, you know, all these different things. Right?
Sure.
And every now and then I'll go, well, dang it, if you'd have just listened, and I got to catch myself,
Yeah.
right? Stop,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, that's not doing any good,
Yeah.
right? Because that ship sailed.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't listen.
Right.
And maybe he did and didn't have the tools to fix whatever it was I said,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Yeah.
don't know, right? So let's start right now and build some
Mm-hmm.
perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll start anew. We'll because the most important part, right? Regardless of how much of you don't have a son, but sometimes sons.
I do. He's 13.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
2 girls and a boy.
You're getting ready to go into this if you haven't already too, right? There's no house big enough in the world for 2 full-grown men.
Man.
Right? They're just not, right? And so yours is getting into full grown, right? At 13.
He's 13,
So
right? Yeah.
There's 13.
Testosterone's kicking in. He's getting some muscles. And
yeah. There's 13-year-olds fighting and dying all over the world, right?
Yeah.
That are feeding families and working.
That's
like this.
true.
And so whether he believes it or not, he's turning into a man. Right?
100%.
Well, sometimes we get to doing this,
Mhm.
but what's the common good?
Mm.
The common good is that relationship between my son and me.
That's good.
That's the number one thing,
Yeah.
right? So no matter what happens,
Yeah.
no matter how he treats me, and I'm not saying he treats me bad.
Sure.
No matter what he says,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what boneheaded decision he makes,
Right.
right? No matter what, that relationship is going to stay intact,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Yeah.
don't care if it costs me everything I got.
That's good.
It's going to stay intact.
Yeah.
Right? And we got a new grandson coming, and that even makes it even more. There's no amount of conflict in the world that's going to
Mm-hmm.
keep me from that grandkid.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And I'm not going to be a part of causing it.
Man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have a very, very distinct common good.
Mm-hmm. And that's where it's important to lean in to the conversation, because with the coworker, like you mentioned, if she would have just remained quietly frustrated and shared it with everybody in the company except you, like it would have just done a lot of damage and not create an opportunity for you guys to really resolve it and work through it and figure it out.
But there's something, and I think I've been harping on it for so
Mhm.
long that I don't really remember where I got it from, but I think I got it from a Keller Williams thing once.
Oh, really?
The 3 things that I hinge my entire leadership programs on,
Mm-hmm.
that I do the entire fire department, everything that when I go into a company and work with them or
Mhm.
whatever, is do they believe I know what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You do know how to be a firefighter.
Right.
You do know conflict management. You
Yeah.
do know that I'm not just making stuff up.
Sure.
Right. You are a technically and tactically sound person.
You're qualified to share. Right.
Yes,
Yep.
I have the formal and informal credentials to back
Right.
it up. Right. And can they trust me?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Do you trust me?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean just, I don't have the ability to go, well, you just need to trust me.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that never comes out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Right. Because you get to assign whatever trust feelings about me that you
Mm-hmm.
want.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you have to decide deals. If you don't trust me, and when I first went on the fire department in
Mhm.
this new spot, it was not uncommon for me to call somebody in and say, do you trust me?
Mm.
And
Just
tell
ask
them
them.
right up front, it's okay to say no.
Wow.
I understand that you may not trust me. I
Mhm.
get it. We don't know each other,
Yeah.
right? trust comes with time,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's
Yeah.
all kinds of pieces. So I give them the license to say, Chief, I don't trust you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the last one is, do I truly care about them, right? If they believe that I truly care about them,
Mm-hmm.
and I show it with actions,
Mm-hmm.
right? I let them self-govern. I put a ton of our budget money into their education, into their growth and all this other
Yeah.
stuff, and that when something happens, I'm there.
That's good.
We had a 16-year-old overdose this morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had two crews there like this, and
Mm-hmm.
the scene was chaos. I'm not going to do anything as a chief,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm not doing the hard stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was important for me to show up to show them that, wow, the chief's here. He actually cares
Yeah.
about us,
That's
right?
good.
And so, do you know what you're doing? Can I trust you? And do you care about me?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes a long way in conflict management, goes a long way in leadership and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's
And
really good. It
yeah,
sounds super basic, and yet,
it's
especially in
so
the heat of the moment, one of the
yeah,
things I like to remind myself during times that feel tense where my wife and I are having a disagreement or if there's conflict is we're on the same team. Like we're not
yes,
against each other,
you
we're
got
for
one
each
common
other.
good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Do
good.
you do you think I know what I'm doing? And it's
Yeah.
okay for you to say no,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to buy you a new car, right?
Perfect.
I think this is I bought her new Subaru,
Yeah.
and she's like, I don't know about that, and I had to ask her, Sheila, do you trust I know what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Do you trust that I did the researching? Do you trust that I would put you only in the safest car that I could find?
Yeah.
Yes, I trust that. This is the car that now it's a matter of
Mm-hmm.
finding color and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? But she had to trust that I did the homework,
Yeah.
right? Because she doesn't know anything about cars,
Right.
right? And then the same thing. Do you trust me? Do you trust
Mm-hmm.
me to get you these things? And mostly, do you know and believe that I care about you,
Mm-hmm.
right? That your safety and your comfort is number one,
That's
right?
good. Yeah.
Right? Well, I do that with employees. I do that when I go into a conflict management
Mm-hmm.
thing, right? Now, when I go into a conflict management deal, there's a thing of trust, right? Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times I do more businesses than I do with individuals,
Okay.
right? And so when I go in, I'm being paid by the company,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, what do you think the employees are thinking?
They're bringing us in to fix us, or
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
right. Here, the company hired this guy
Yeah.
to come in and basically, hack off
Clean house and clean us up and
whatever.
right. Yeah,
I've heard
sure.
it all,
Yeah.
right? And I tell the companies right off the bat, I said, look, if you're looking for somebody to come in here in a week, give a class, I can do that for you, but I'm going
Sure.
to tell you right up front, I'll give the class, I'll collect your money,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
If you want me to change, then you have to hire me for a long period of time,
Mm.
right? My contracts are generally 3 months,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And then you come in, you work with the employees, you sit with the bosses, you look at the processes, you
Mm-hmm.
look at all these different things that can cause conflict,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
So there's no overnight fixes or solutions. It sounds like it's
never
a
an overnight
process and it
fix,
takes
right?
time.
So
Yeah.
so I have a graduate degree in conflict, and
Okay.
I still screw it up,
Yeah.
and I still study,
Mm-hmm.
right? How many hours go into a graduate degree? A lot.
Mm.
Years of studying,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to think that there's a class that you can walk in and give to a company
Yeah.
is just not, it's like saying, hey, can you teach me the 5 steps of communication?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, there is no such thing,
Yeah.
right? Or in law enforcement, this is a big one. Their defensive tactics, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need 5 things that I can use on the street in case I get in a fight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there is no such thing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It takes years and years. There wasn't 5 things I learned in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
It's 26 years of studying hard and
Yeah.
rolling around on the mats and all this other
Mm-hmm.
stuff that caused me to be where I'm at
That's
today.
good. I think that's important to realize because part of our culture, I love YouTube. Our conversation going on YouTube, and I think there's a tendency to oversimplify things. And the challenge with that could be thinking about relationships are dynamic, and something. If I have not been managing conflict well, it's probably not going to change overnight. Therefore, realizing that, I think things can improve overnight, but long-term significant change that lasts it's probably just going to take some time.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a degree in psychology, and I do a lot of different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I will walk in, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll start like some kind of conversation with my wife, right?
Yeah.
And I will start into something I learned, and she'll go, "Stop," right? Because
Call you out on it. Yeah.
Because what happens is you get into this mindset of here are the steps.
I
Well,
see.
that's not a natural flow of conversation. That's not a natural interaction between people.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
And somebody can spot it immediately.
Yeah.
Right? And you've seen it before. Oh, they're doing, the read technique.
Sure.
They're doing this technique.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so we don't. There is no shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to relieve conflict out of your life,
Mm-hmm.
it's like drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're gonna have to put in the effort.
Mm.
Right? It's gonna take time. There's a reason that alcoholic gets a pin every year.
Yeah.
Right? Because it takes years and years and years and years and years
Yeah.
to get out of that cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, conflict isn't much different.
Mm.
Right? We can change our behavior pretty quick,
Mm-hmm.
but if we don't change the outlook, the behavior will always revert back.
So outlook meaning like mindset, how we think
Our
about
mindset,
things,
our
perspective.
character, our perspective.
Okay,
and stuff
the
like
inner
that.
work.
The internal, the
Mhm.
emotional intelligence piece.
I see.
And so, how many employees have you had over the years that you've gotten onto, and they change their behavior,
Mhm.
right?
Temporary. Yeah.
But very seldom do we change our character or our personality, if you will, right? Our intuitive pieces, right? It takes a catastrophic change in our life to change that. The death of a loved one, a religious revelation, something big.
Mm-hmm.
And that can change a personality.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, we just kind of change our behavior.
I see what you're saying.
And I've seen people, they go, well, he doesn't act anything like that at home,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why do they act like that here?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they're changing their behavior just so they don't get fired or whatever the case may be.
I see.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Right? And we go through it over and over and over. I just talked to you about this last time. Well, then we go through a little while, and the behavior will change for a little while, long enough to get out of their trouble. And then we start over, and then we keep doing this cycle over and over.
Yeah.
And so if you really want to change, we have to make it meaningful. You have to, I have to not want to be an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be so sick of fighting with my wife that I'm willing to change.
Yeah.
Maybe she walks in one day and says, you know what, I'm sick of this. I'm out of here, right? And I'm taking the kids. Bang!
Man.
Now all of a sudden,
Right.
something changed dramatically.
Yeah.
Right? And even that doesn't change a lot. Some people, right?
That's true.
But you see it.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden this person changed, and they're committed to making their life better, right? And that's kind of the road that Sheila and I went on. I mean, it was super rocky, and then one day we decided that, you know what, we're done. We're just gonna, you go your way, I'm gonna go my way, and this will be, we won't have to worry about this anymore, right?
Right.
And then the next day come around, and the next day come around, and the next day come around, and we didn't do it, and we didn't do it, and we didn't do it. And pretty soon we're back in love again, and that cycle kind of continued to where we finally decided, not in a day, but over a period of, I don't know, maybe 5 years or something. I don't know what the time, because you don't really know.
Yeah.
That we're better off together than we are apart. We're better off loving each other than we are not, right? The two of us together can have a really, really nice life.
That's so good.
Right?
Yeah.
That's conflict management in a nutshell. It takes time.
Yeah.
But most of all, it's perspective, right? It's building a common good. I always tell the story. My wife gets so mad. I said, we were gonna get a divorce. We had a big fight over the kids, right? Neither one of us wanted them. So we stayed together. She goes, quit telling that stupid story. But what, in a funny way, just like Harvard, that the humor test played into effect. That funness of our relationship started growing. That it was okay to walk by and slap her on the rear end again at
Yeah.
60 years old. You know what I mean? And
Would you share some of the background of that humorous test in case somebody hasn't heard of that before?
yeah, so at Harvard, and
Mhm.
I don't really know what year this was,
Mhm.
right? They did the Harvard psychology department did a study,
Mhm.
and what they did is they give a humor test. That's what they call it, and I don't know what the actual test
Yeah.
questions were, but they give this humor test. And they compared that humor test at the end of 4 years, these
Mhm.
incoming freshmen, to the college entrance exam.
Mhm.
And what they found out was that the humor test that was measuring emotional intelligence
Mhm.
was 10 times more predictive than the college entrance exam
That's
that measured
wild.
IQ, right? So EQ and IQ,
Mhm.
right? So IQ is one thing, EQ is a completely different thing. And what we're dealing with 99.9% of the time
Mhm.
in conflict management is the EQ portion.
Is that emotional intelligence? Okay.
Emotional quotient is
Oh, got
the
it. Okay.
EQ.
Oh, yeah.
Like
EQ.
IQ, intelligent
Yeah.
quotient, and emotional quotient.
Okay.
And that can be measured in multiple different
Mm.
ways. If you want more information on emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman is the original.
Okay. Thanks for the recommendation on that.
It's
Yeah.
pretty good.
So that the EQ ended up being more significant long term to their success than the IQ.
Yes, and that goes with any business.
Okay.
Right? That goes with any business at all. When
Mhm.
I was the director for career technical programs at the community college,
Mhm.
right? And one thing that nobody ever come in, all these businesses. So I had everything from nursing to welding to fire to police. Every
Okay.
single technical,
Mhm.
was under my purview, and I sat on all the advisory committees and all
Mhm.
that stuff. Nobody ever said, "Hey, your welders can't weld. Your nurses can't nurse.
Mhm.
Your firefighters can't fight fires." Nobody ever said that.
Mhm.
Right? What they all said was that the welder can't talk to the machinist. That
Oh.
they can't talk to my customers. They can't talk to the other employees. That they don't know what a day's work looks. It was all emotional intelligent type stuff, right?
Okay.
And so what makes why are salesmen the
Mhm.
richest people on earth,
Mm.
right? So the richest people are all salesmen,
Hmm.
almost all.
Mhm.
Why is it? Because they're just so good?
Hmm.
No, it's because salesmen have an emotional intelligence off the chart. They can a good salesman,
Mhm.
they'll go from company to company. One day they're selling widgets, the next day they're selling tires.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter to them,
Mhm.
right? Because it's about relationships.
Mm.
That's why they're the best.
Getting along with people.
Getting along with people,
Ah.
right?
Mm.
That's why it's more advantageous.
That's interesting.
And that's one of the key aspects of conflict management
Mhm.
is having that high EQ.
Wow. One of the things I'm picking up on you, it sounds like one of the things that you do well is you lean in to the conversation instead of avoiding it. And the reason am I tracking with you on that?
Mhm.
One of the reasons that stands out to me is because just looking at my observation of my upbringings, the pattern that I noticed looking back was there would be some type of disagreement, and then there would be a tension in the relationship, and then there would be no conversation, and then there would be a period of not talking to that person for sometimes years, and then maybe someday in the future circle back and re-engage that relationship. Where looking back, one of the things I just realized that a big part of it, I think one of the things that I've grown in is actually leaning in to conversations that I naturally want to run from and avoid.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's one of the key steps is to have the conversation.
It's that approach, right? You got to make the approach.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't make the approach, there's no chance in the world that the conflict's going to go away if you don't make an approach. Right? Somebody has to talk to the other one.
I can't manage the conflict I avoid or ignore.
Yes. And if you don't, that's just a
key step. It sounds like
it's the number one step.
Yeah.
Right? We have to talk to each other, and both sides have to be willing to talk. Now, sometimes when we approach each other, I mean, it can be brutal, right? It can get into name calling. It can get into all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
It may take approaching. It may take years.
Yeah.
To build that, to deals. But one thing is we have to be committed to doing it, right? So if my brother and I are really close, so I'm not saying anything, right?
Sure.
My brother and I are super, super close. But if he got mad at me, I would probably call him every day until he's talked to me. I'd say, you know what? Here's the deal. At some point, you're going to talk to me, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not, if I got to get on an airplane and fly to Phoenix
Yeah.
and beat on your door, that's what I'm going to do.
That's committed.
Because we have to be committed to that approach.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we may get in the front yard and duke it out and whatever. But I'm still going to keep talking until we finally sit down and go, what? Look, do you love me? Yes. I love you. Okay, so now at least we got that part of it. All right, let's fight some more, right? And then we may do this for a while, but eventually we're going to tire of it, right? We're going to go, you know what? Maybe we do have a common good, right? Maybe you do love me more than you love that conflict, right? But what happens is all of a sudden, you know, I see it all the time. This family member, I don't talk to my brother. Well, why not? Why, 10 years ago.
Yeah, back in 82.
Back in 82, he brought, turkey pie, and I was supposed to bring turkey pie.
Right.
It was some stupid thing.
Yeah.
But what happened is they were mad for a couple of days, right? And 99% of the time, that would be it. But what happened is neither one of them called the other one. And now all of a sudden it's a week.
Right.
Now it gets harder. Then a year. Then 2 years.
Yeah, I've experienced
then
that.
2 years.
Right.
And now all of a sudden it's like, well, they obviously don't care because they didn't call me.
Yeah.
Right. And now you have this giant conflict, and the chasm is so wide now.
Right.
Sometimes it's irreparable. Right. But I would say rarely. Sometimes it is, but rarely is it irreparable. Most of the time, if you just reach out and go, you know what, I don't even know what the hell happened, but I'm getting older.
Yeah.
You know what? And I ain't liking not talking to you. Right? Well, F you. Right? And they hang up. A week later, you call back, and send them a note, email, whatever the case may be. And you start, laying them boards across that chasm, to build that bridge. And eventually what happens is it builds itself back, right? Because ultimately, you're family members, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I knew a guy one time that he actually killed a girl. I was just a little kid, my neighbor. And my dad was so upset. And I mean, it was a murder, right? It wasn't like I hit him with a car. It was he's
serious,
a biker guy. He's still in prison to this day, 30, 40 years later.
Wow.
And I'm not saying he should be out or anything. I'm not even saying he's a good guy. But his family never stopped loving him. Even in prison, they would call him and talk to him. And
wow.
I would go, I'm going to call him Joe. I would say, hey, how's Joe doing? Yeah, he's doing all right. He's been there a long time now. He's an old man and this and that and everything.
Yeah. Wow.
But so if they can do it.
Kind of sets things in perspective, huh?
Yeah,
so it sounds like a key part is taking the initiative to engage the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's recognizing that, okay, there's a conflict, right? There's a conflict in my business. There's a conflict in my deals. Not being afraid and not being the alcoholic that tries to save himself, right? Well, I know what I'm doing. I don't need any help from the outside.
Yeah.
Right? Companies do it all the time. They go, well, let's just, hey, Bob, do you want to do a conflict management class? Get online, find a class, right? I call it checkbox training, right? Check the box.
Yeah. Yep. What else? You mentioned the tools 5. Did we cover all the 5? Okay.
Yeah.
Walk us through them again.
So we have make an approach.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to share perspectives.
Yeah.
We're going to build understanding.
Okay.
Right. This is what I want. This is what you want. How do we get? Basically, what we're doing is we're coming up with that common good. Right.
Yeah.
And then we're going to come up with a plan.
Oh, the plan piece. Yeah.
We're gonna or agree upon solutions.
Yeah.
Is what we're gonna do. These are the solutions that we're gonna do. This is what's gonna solve this problem. I'm gonna call you and your brother. You know what? I'm gonna call you once a week. I'm gonna be committed to call you at least once a week, right? And check on you, right? I'm really gonna do it. And then we come up with the plan is the last one. Right?
I see.
But that's where a lot of the conflict management falls apart. We come up with, we make the approach, we build understanding,
Right.
or we share perspectives, we build understandings,
We go through the
agree on
process.
solutions,
Yeah.
and then we come up with a plan, but we don't follow through on it.
How come, you think? You've worked with a lot of people over the years.
Remember we talked?
Yeah.
We're vested in our conflict.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We like the conflict that we have. We like the enemy that we have. We're used to them. Right? We know what's going to happen with them.
Yeah.
I don't want a new one. And if I'm vested in conflict in general in my life, right? I'm that person. Then if I solve the conflict with you, I got to go find another conflict. Right? Because I got to have conflict. I strive on stress. That's the person you
So part of it is paying attention to relationships, the quality of the relationships I have. And if I find myself in the cycle of there's always a conflict relationally with people, perhaps I need to do I need to consider, help me out here. I need to think about that.
Yeah.
And see if I'm in that cycle of.
We have this piece, right? And we're real bad about it in the United States, right? We focus on gross domestic product, right? I want to build more widgets than you. My company's in competition with you, right? And what that does is that translates to our regular life too, right? So if I get a house, then you got to get a house, and we have this, keeping up with the Jones mentality,
Comparison,
right? And what happens, and so it's a you versus. It's me versus the rest of the world mentality, right? Because companies kind of foster that, right?
It's in our culture.
It's in our culture, right?
Yeah.
I need you. So we have a thing at where I work of setting goals, right? Well, at what point does your goal, you've met your goals and you don't want to set any more goals, but the companies won't allow that. Right, I need you to set the next goal and 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 the next goal. And I'm almost 64 years old. I don't have any more goals, right? I met my goals. My goal now is to be happy, right? So my gross domestic product is actually gross domestic happiness.
Okay.
Right? That's my goal, right?
Yeah.
Well, how do you put that on a form, right? We don't do it. So now all of a sudden, what I have this, what they call a fixed pie deals. If I get 60%, you get 40. And then I'm going to try to get 70 of it, and you get 30, like this. And what we really need to be looking at is an expanded pie, right? How do we both get? How do we both, the rising tide lifts all ships mentality?
How do we all win? Instead of competing, how do we all win together?
But as we get farther and farther down, if you look at our society, it's getting more and more competitive and less collaborative.
Even in our family tree with each other, you think?
Oh, sure.
Wow.
Sure.
So it's a human being thing.
Sure. Now, I mean, how many times have you subconsciously shared, the car you're driving or you're doing this? So my brother's really, he's pretty wealthy, but he's very, very conscious of the perception, right? He doesn't he drives a regular car. He drives all these nice things because he just doesn't want people to think bad of him, right? And he's super giving and all this other stuff. I'm super, super proud of him.
Sure.
But that's the anomaly, right? Even with people without money, right? I mean, I find myself doing it now and then. I did this activity. I did this. You're kind of throwing it out there to maybe bolster your ego or to make yourself look good for others or whatever the case may be. And that's all part of that competitive thing.
I see what you're saying.
And so when I do it, I try to back it off, right? I go, people don't care that you done all these things.
So some self-awareness.
Just being self-aware that you're not being boisterous or pompous, or that I want to set a stage of like where I work. I want to set a stage of them, right? That this isn't about me. It's about you, right? It's about you getting. I tell people, look, I've had my career, right? I've done everything that I need to do. I don't need another plaque on the wall. I don't need any of that.
Yeah.
I need you to have that now,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I see what you're
And
saying.
that's the expanded pie. I had my pie. Now let's expand this out. I don't need it all,
Yeah.
right? I got plenty of
Wow.
money in the bank. I got a house. I got a wife. I got a, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
I'm comfortable.
It reminds me of moving from success to significance. Or there's a book called a mentor of mine, Brian, recommended probably about a month ago. I'm in my second time reading it, and it's called The Second Mountain. And really, it's moving from a focus of me achieving and a focus on me and my results to focus outward on others and building up others, mentoring others, and training and equipping others and helping them be successful.
So my wife, when I first retired,
Mm-hmm.
right, and I'm kind of writing some papers on this too. This purposeful meaning,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm convinced that a lot of our suicide in this world has to do with people losing meaning, right? That they don't. Viktor Frankl wrote a book,
Man's Search for Meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning. It's a
Good one.
powerful,
Oh, yeah.
powerful book, and it changed my perspective. And my wife, for the life of me, I was kind of looking in my over your shoulder there, seeing if I could see it. Another book that she gave me, and I can't remember what the name of it is, but it has to do with your second, like
Okay.
second mountain.
Yeah.
And as we get older,
Mm-hmm.
our ability to take on more information
Mm-hmm.
starts ceasing,
Hmm.
right? And that's at a pretty early age.
Mm-hmm.
It's, they've done study and study. By the time you're 35,
Mm-hmm.
your ability to take on new information is extremely limited,
Hmm.
right? And so all the major discoveries in the world
Mm-hmm.
have been made, I did not realize this, by people between 25 and 35.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting in
Wow.
this book. What happens though is your ability to regurgitate the information you already have
Mm-hmm.
grows significantly, right? And so you become a doer to a teacher.
Could you say that again?
Your ability to regurgitate the information that you already have on,
Oh.
right, becomes very, very profound, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your ability to hone that information, to teach that information, to use that information
Wow.
grows exponentially,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's where I tell a lot of firefighters when I'm talking to them, I said,
Mm-hmm.
you have three stages of your career. The first part of your career is shut up,
Mm.
right? Just shut up and listen, right?
A lot of wisdom there.
You think you know, but you don't know,
Yeah.
right? And you're going to get somebody killed. So just shut up and listen,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then that middle stage of your career is the doing stage,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the stage where you should be writing the papers. That's the stage where you should be coming up with ideas. That's the stage where you should be, doing all the things, writing policies, going to the National Fire Academy, doing all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the end stage where I'm at, and you become an advisor,
Mm-hmm.
right? A teacher, that guru that sits in the back waiting for somebody to come ask the question.
Yeah.
Hey, Chief, back in the day when
you got some wisdom to share.
You start having you take all that information that you've learned over the years and you start giving it back.
That's good.
Right? And that's what this book was all about. And so
that sounds good.
And so for me, that's the information that I already have with Viktor Frankl's book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going, look, you have this knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Write it down. Start a coaching company.
That's good.
Do go get your. I'm looking into going back and getting a license in licensed counseling. Right.
Okay.
Another master's degree.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm waffling. Do I want to spend the time getting the counselor's license, which is a couple of years, almost 3, or do I just want to start a coaching company and do these things, right?
Yeah.
Right. And take what I already know and give it back.
There we go.
Give it back to people.
Yeah. Good for you. I didn't realize that. So which is there a direction you feel compelled at this moment?
Purposeful meaning, right?
Oh.
And so did you read Viktor Frankl's book,
Man's Search for Meaning? Yeah, several times. I actually referenced that book in my book called The Path to Purpose.
It's exact. Yeah, it's the same concept right now. And so helping what I want to do is I want to help, especially guys that are retiring, right? And so in my field, you spend an entire life saving lives, right? I mean, like literally,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like you're like, it's exciting. It's gas is full on, and you have all these different things going on, and then all of a sudden you retire, and you think you're going to go fishing, but you don't, right? And it's okay for a little while, but then all of a sudden you start losing meaning, right?
It's a big
And
deal.
it's a very big deal, especially when you went from 100% to 0, right?
You go from saving lives, literally being in the emergency medical service, being fireman, paramedic, EMT, to now not. That's a big change.
So think about them guys this morning, man. They, people are screaming and yelling, and you got a 16-year-old laying on the ground like this, and stuff are flying everywhere. Police officers are holding people, sirens are going off, and 30 minutes later, they go home, and their wife's saying, "Okay, hey, I need you to take the kids to school. I need you to do this. I need you to do that." And it's like this constantly. And now all of a sudden you retire, right? And you're on the ground and you're down here.
Right.
And that's where a lot of our suicides happen.
I see.
And I think the same thing with these kids, right? They see what's going on in the government, and they see what's going on in the world, and they see what's going on with prices, or at least what they perceive, right? And they think, why keep doing this, right? This is dumb, right? I don't have any deals. So somebody needs to help them with meaning, right? How do you put that back into your existence, right? Life in and of itself doesn't have meaning, right? To me, right? It doesn't have meaning, right? You have to put the meaning into life.
I see.
Right? At least in for me, right? We have too many nihilists right now, right? That just think there's no meaning,
no significance, no purpose in life. Yeah, it'd be a hopeless place to be.
Yeah, it's a hopeless. And imagine going through life like that. Well, hell, I might kill myself too. Right?
I heard that as human beings, we could endure hard, challenging things, but that's not what take people. Hard times or hard things don't take people out. But when we lose hope, that's where people give up and call it quits. Yeah. They lose hope. Which man's search for meaning, Viktor Frankl, being able to have a positive hope for the future could help pull somebody through hard times. And yet even the best of us, if we get to a point where we lose hope and we feel helpless, man, that's a red flag position to be in.
But to have that hope, you have to have a why. Like
that's true.
Said, right? You can suffer anyhow if you have a why.
Absolutely. That's true. Yeah. So you're thinking about starting to help people navigate that in coaching, perhaps, counseling. Yeah. Good for you. I can see you doing that. Next career. Yeah, that sounds like you. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see if anybody does it.
So is there if somebody's listening and they're just like, man, I'm stuck in that cycle where I look at my relationships within my household, within my relatives, there's conflict there, there's tension there, there's people I haven't talked to in years, I feel overwhelmed. What would be their next step you recommend they take?
Well, assuming that they've already made the approach, right? That look, getting the family around, right? Look, we obviously have an issue going on here. Is this something that we can take care of, right? Or is this something that we need to bring a professional in? Is this worth saving, right? If it's not, we'll just all split we'll just go the other way. But if we have a common good here, right, around this kitchen table, then is it worth fighting for? Is it worth going through the processes, right? And at that point, maybe that's the time to go through the things, build showing perspectives, right? Well,
that's good.
You never listened to me,
yeah,
right? And not getting defensive, right? And so we have to be able to take that criticism, because there's going to be criticism.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be conflict.
Sure.
Right? At least negative conflict.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody, you always like her better than me.
Yeah.
You always
see those words trigger me a little bit just sitting here. I want to say never, always, like really.
But
so that's
But them are the things that you're going to hear.
Yeah.
Right. And as a good conflict manager or good, somebody sharing perspectives, that is their perspective, not yours.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be.
So it's not the time to debate that. And I'm right, you're wrong.
We debate that down to understand.
Counterproductive.
We do that later.
I see.
Right? Right now, we're sharing perspectives. We'll build understanding in a minute.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good.
You always, take her side. You always, you think I'm stupid. Whatever the case may be, right? Mm-hmm. And take that in.
Just listen, right? Just listen. Don't be defensive. Listen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? Because remember, it's their perspective. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say share yours. I mean, your time will come. You share yours in the format too.
Yeah.
But not like this.
That's good.
Right?
That's a good point.
Like in the Boy Scouts or whatever it was, they have the talking stick. Okay, nice. It's your turn to talk. That kind of thing. You can't talk unless you have the talking stick. Yeah. That kind of thing.
Okay.
And then you can go into the understanding. Okay. Well, I know you feel that way. This is what I meant when I said that. This is why I'm taking your brother's side. Mm-hmm. This is why, I couldn't babysit that day, or what you name, right? Mm-hmm. This is, one of the things you were never around when you were dad. You were never around, right? Well, that's a perspective, right? Mm-hmm. The understanding part may be, look, we were poor. Mm-hmm. Right? I had to work 2 jobs, right? I worked 2 jobs. I missed a lot, and I hate that, right? Mm-hmm. But I was willing to do that to put food in your mouth, right? Mm-hmm. To buy you the things that you wanted. Man. Now we're starting to build, oh, shoot. Yeah. Right? This was my perspective. But now that I understand why, that dad was hurting too. Mm-hmm. He didn't get to see me grow up, right? Mm-hmm. He didn't get... I use that thing all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Is I didn't get to see my kids grow up, right? I mean... firemen didn't make any money when I was young. I had to work 2 jobs and sometimes 3 jobs. Yeah. Right? It was nothing for me to leave at, 7 o'clock one morning, work 24 hours and not get home till late the next day, sometimes 3 days in a row, right? Mm-hmm. The fire department called for overtime, 24 hours overtime. Hell yeah, I had to take it, because we had light bills and stuff. Sure. And, poor Sheila, she's raising the kids all by herself like this, and because I'm gone all the time. Yeah. And well, yeah, the kids felt like they didn't have a dad. Maybe she felt like she didn't have a husband and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And so when we start sharing them perspectives and then they start understanding, that my dad drank a lot, right? And in the very beginning, I was very angry when I first left, and I thought, how could he wasn't a very good dad, blah, 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 blah. And then I started changing the perspective of that conflict, right? I think, what must it have been like to not know how to love your kids? Man. How painful would that be that he didn't know how to say or didn't feel comfortable enough to say, I love you. Right. I want to give you a hug, son, like that. Sure. I would probably drink too. Mm-hmm. Right? And so when you start changing that perspective, right? In the last couple of years of my dad's life, we made amends, right? Wow. And we kind of hated each other before that, right? Or I don't know if we hated. That's kind of a strong word, but we didn't get along. And the last few years, as he had a stroke and he couldn't do anything, and I was picking him up and helping my mom with him like this, we got to where we were laughing at each other and all kinds of that's beautiful. All kinds of stuff, right? Yeah. Wow. But it took changing the conflict, changing the perspective, assigning a different emotion to that situation. Yeah. That's what changed it. Right. And that's good. Yeah. Man, thank you so much for sharing with us today. Yeah. It's my pleasure. Yeah. Appreciate you a ton. Good work. Thank you, buddy. Yeah.